Well, thank you for that heavy applause. All four people in the room are showing their approval. And thank you, Maya, for having me. And I really want to thank the UBCM and the delegates to the UBCM convention, because this has not been easy. It's been a heavy reorganization to get everybody involved, and it seems to be working exceptionally well. And that's a tribute not only to all of you as delegates, to the leadership of the UBCM, but also to the people in the UBCM staff who've managed to pull this together and make it work so well. Now, we're in a very difficult time. I just tried to come over from Vancouver and the float plane turned around and went back again, so I had to get the helicopter over, but it was worth it because we all have a lot of work to do. We know that this has been a year like no other. The British Columbians in the middle of a pandemic, and we're going to have to face that monumental, once-in-a-century nightmare that is COVID-19. People, businesses, governments, and especially local governments all across BC have risen to this challenge and made the sacrifices necessary to keep our society on track and to keep things moving. We all did our best from March right through till now. And that's why our party, the BC Liberal Party, worked hand in hand with Dr. Bonnie Henry and with the Health Minister, Adrian Dix, to make sure that the health of British Columbians was our top priority. As we said from the very beginning, we're here to fight the virus, not each other. And we stood by that. We didn't grumble about testing delays. We didn't promote unproven remedies. We didn't grumble about information disclosure because that would have not been helpful. It was the right thing to do to support Dr. Henry and the efforts of the government of British Columbia to make sure that we are getting the best health responses in this pandemic. We're proud of that record, and we stand by it. We hope that you're proud of that too, because we're now in an election. It's now a more partisan time, and things get said that perhaps shouldn't be. But our position on the pandemic is solid. It has to be a joint effort of our society involving every level of government and every one of our institutions to fight it. It's taken a heavy toll on our province, and we now fully realize the unfolding economic and social cost. We know about the $13 billion deficit. We know the economy is shrinking by 5% or more. We know that retail sales are down about 11%. Business investment is down 11%, and we expect it'll go down further. And there's a big lump coming 7 days from now on September 30th, when $6.2 billion of deferred taxes come due for everything from employers' health tax to carbon tax to sales tax. And this is going to be a very large obstacle for many businesses and small businesses in BC to meet. These are abstract numbers, but they mean real things to real people. But after we all worked together as elected officials in good faith, we did our best for the health of the people of British Columbia. We suddenly find that we're sideswiped by the ambitions of John Horgan and the NDP. John Horgan has decided that rather than continuing to govern British Columbia across party lines, as we have for 6 months, he would rather focus on what's best for his party rather than what's best for British Columbians. He's embarked on what we consider to be an unethical power grab, and it's at the expense of the governance of British Columbia. The Prime Minister has said in recent days, and he's right, this is a time for governments to govern and not talk about elections. So how have people reacted? Well, in the past 2 days, I can say with all sincerity that I've heard disgust from the people of British Columbia. People who've lost confidence in why we have made our efforts to govern this province jointly. People who say that it was inappropriate to call this election. People who question the ethics of the NDP and the leader who had plunged us into this uncertainty of an election at a time like this. They ask, what kind of person would do that? I get this question multiple times a day. And the answer is John Horgan and the NDP. It's not just irresponsible, it's just plain wrong. So we're all looking for a plan for recovery. That's going to be the essential work that all of us do as we come through the pandemic, which we need to fight together. We waited 6 months for the economic recovery plan to come forward from the NDP. Every other province put theirs out in June or July. But what we found was that the plan was delayed by a full 3 months for electoral reasons, so that the NDP could use it as a springboard to run into an election. So they could spend millions of dollars in advertising this last weekend on Facebook and television to promote their own interests. We should be very clear about this. All of you know that government has gone into caretaker mode. I was a deputy minister in 2005 during the election. I know exactly what that means. No new programs are initiated. It's basic care of the work of government and not new initiatives. Only essential programs continue during the caretaker period, and Elections BC has told us that there'll be at least 800,000 postal votes being sent in, and the result will probably not be known until at least mid-November. So we're looking at a 2-month gap in governance. This is a time when we need governance most, and instead the NDP and John Horgan have decided to get rid of the leadership aspect of government and leave it up to the civil service to do the basic work. This could have been avoided with earlier release of the plan when all the other provinces released theirs in early summer. Instead, the NDP cynically decided to put their recovery plan out last week, 3 days before calling an election. And let's also be clear, the plan that was put out does next to nothing for the people of Cache Creek. It does next to nothing for that restaurant that's running out of steam in Kelowna. It does next to nothing for thousands of tourism operators in British Columbia, except give them a consultation process, which will not happen for many months, if at all. Is that what the NDP really wanted to do to get elected? To derail our society in its time of greatest need? To play with people's lives? To tease them with hope and then take it away? We say this is an unethical move that they've done. Let's get a snapshot of British Columbia. Right now, we know that 668,000 people took advantage of the federal CERB program because they ran out of money this summer. We know that 150,000 jobs have been lost since February in fields as diverse as retail, construction, and of course, tourism. We know that people are desperate to figure out what their future is. If you're a flight attendant or a pilot, if you're a tour operator, if you're someone who does ski work in the winter, then what does the future hold? There are a lot of very anxious people around in our province. The challenge ahead is simply huge, but we can do it. We know we can do this. We have to do it. We must do it. And we can all do it together as elected officials to help lead this province into the future. We need to rebuild BC. That's the goal we're going to have to all accept, and that's going to mean that we have to first restore confidence amongst the people of British Columbia, and then we need to get on with rebuilding BC. Our team's ready to show British Columbia a better plan, a better approach, an optimistic approach, a way to build that future together. Over the coming days, we're going to present British Columbians with a plan to get more people back to work. A plan to make it easier for mums and dads to get to work while raising a family. A plan to roll back the terrible toll of drug addiction that we're seeing unfold on our streets every day. A plan to restore safety in our communities, because we're seeing the ravages of crime everywhere from Quesnel to Nanaimo to Chilliwack to right here in Victoria. A plan to increase the supply of housing. And a plan to get BC back on track and get us excited again about living in what I think all of us think is truly the best place on earth. We've got big challenges, and as a province, we will meet them together. We will make this work. We have to. Housing is an area that we can all talk about with some knowledge. I was just talking to Maya, and she was telling me that in Souk, the population has basically doubled since incorporation 21 years ago. That's stunning when you think about it. But local government in Souk has adapted to that and made it work. We know now that the average home price in British Columbia is actually higher than it was 3 years ago when the NDP came in promising affordability. In the Lower Mainland, the benchmark home price is up 5% in the last year alone. And the average price of a condo in the Lower Mainland is up 10% over the past 3 years when the NDP told us there's going to be more affordable housing. We have a duty amongst us all to increase the supply of affordable housing across the entire housing spectrum so that all British Columbians can have a place to call home. The NDP promised us 114,000 housing units when they were elected in 2017. What we've got is 2,963 units, most of which, the vast majority of which, are temporary modular housing. Even if this were permanent housing, at this rate, it would take 130 years to satisfy their campaign promise. We can't carry on like this. We have work to do. We have to get past these empty promises, because we know now that John Horgan and the NDP knowingly misled the public of British Columbia with their absurdly optimistic housing estimates. So how do we fix this? We have to work with local government to make it possible for you to reduce costs, to speed up permitting processes, to make it possible to build affordable housing across British Columbia. We need to look at places like Seattle, where rents have actually fallen. How? The City of Seattle in 2019 saw 12,250 new rental units. The City of Vancouver is slightly smaller, and these are the cities, not the entire metropolitan areas, but the cities. In Vancouver, the number was 947 in that same year. We have to do better, and we're going to have to combine housing with transit expansion. That's hardwired for this party and for me. The transit is essential to the future of our metropolitan area. We need to encourage builders to be part of building costs in transit, and we need to move ahead with student housing. When I was Minister of Advanced Education, it became pretty obvious that if you could provide more student housing, it took a huge amount of pressure off the housing market, and you provided safe, secure, solid housing for students in the process. This is going to be a combined effort, obviously, of all levels in government, and especially Ottawa. But we've heard them in their throne speech today say that they want to move ahead with the kind of agenda that we're talking about at this conference. The opportunity is there. We have to pull it together, as I did for 2 years as the Deputy Minister responsible for the federal relationship when we brought home the Canada Line, a $2.3 billion investment that would not have happened unless it were called the Canada Line, because they provided the extra funding to make it happen. We've recently lost sight of another big challenge in British Columbia, and it's especially true in our rural communities. Our forest industry is a world leader in sustainability and is one of the most significant economic drivers in this province. The industry provides 140,000 jobs in our province, 1 in 4 jobs in manufacturing, and almost half the resource revenue that this province collects. 2-to-1 ratio of jobs that are spun off from the forest industry, most of them in urban areas. And yet, even before COVID-19, we saw 10 mill closures in the previous year. Towns that you know, towns that I know, Vavenby, Chasm, 100 Mile House, Quesnel, the list goes on and on, Fort St. John, Isle Pierre, Mackenzie. Some of those communities wonder if they're going to exist in 3 years. Because what happened is with a dozen mill closures, those communities started to feel like maybe it's all over. And what we saw, sadly, from the NDP was complete indifference. They avoided going to those communities. I'm all over the interior of British Columbia on a regular basis, and the lack of appearance by NDP cabinet ministers, and particularly by the Premier, has been noted by people all through the interior of BC because they felt like they've been abandoned. And let's remember UBCM last year. We were in Vancouver at the Convention Centre. You were doing the work you need to do. And then we heard of a movement. People got up at 2 a.m. in Vanderhoof, and they got in their logging trucks, and they drove to Merritt. From communities all over the interior of British Columbia, 225 logging trucks drove down to Vancouver and made their presence very loudly known, because those people were demanding to be heard. They spent $100,000 on fuel that day to get to Vancouver and capture the attention, not so much of UBCM, but of the government of British Columbia, because they felt they had been completely ignored as their lives and careers and families started to unravel. We all know forestry is in transition, but these people cannot be forgotten. We don't write people off in this province. We stick together. We look out for each other. Just as we are in this pandemic, we have to do the same thing when our communities go through these transitions. There can be a bright future, and a BC Liberal government will support the forest industry and forest communities to get back on their feet, to create the right conditions to continue this world-leading, globally competitive, innovative business that we call forestry. That means we have to invest and protect our working forest land base. We have to allow companies and communities to plan a future where those workers will have a home to come home to. We need to simplify the rules and processes and streamline permitting, eliminate redundancies, find ways to get things done. And we have to do all of that without compromising environmental standards in any way. We will be rolling out in the days to come some very provocative environmental policies that I do hope you will find attractive and exciting, because that's our goal when we say we want to form government. For any of us to say, we think we've got a better way, and we think it's what you will enjoy hearing, what you will find stimulating and exciting to talk about a better British Columbia. We're going to have to work hard, and we're going to have to work hard with our First Nations and make sure that they are full partners in this future of the forest industry, because we cannot grow this sector, we cannot help this sector to prosper unless we commit to doing it together. In natural resources, we have some similar challenges all across British Columbia. It's critical that we have certainty on the land base and clarity for job creators. We need to create the world's first completely online digital regulatory registry. Nobody else has done it, and we can do it. Just look at what's happened at this UBCM meeting. If you'd been told 4 months ago we'd be having a virtual meeting with virtual voting, with no mixed up names on the ballots, with breakout groups, I think all of you would have cringed and said, I'll be pleased to see if that works. And you've done it. You did it. And Maya, I'll give you the credit, but I'm not sure it was you alone. So we need to improve these processes for mine development, for permitting, inspection, remediation, cutting the processing times. We need to pursue resource benefit sharing agreements to make sure that local communities benefit just as much as the developers in the project, and as much as the First Nations, who are so instrumental in our mining industry. We've seen that all across British Columbia. And the one that comes to mind, of course, is the Bruce Jack mine in Talltown Territory, where I worked as a young doctor in Dease Lake, far in the northwest corner of British Columbia. It works because it's done jointly with full participation of all levels of government, and especially with the Talltown First Nation. So to wrap things up, I just want to say we're looking forward to difficult times. We have to stick together on the health issues, because we cannot create uncertainty amongst the people of British Columbia. We cannot breed the kind of mess that has happened in the United States through discrediting government processes, through questioning science. As a medical doctor myself, I am committed to making sure that we follow the best possible health practices in this province to make sure we get through this pandemic with minimal death, disability, destruction. It's causing enough damage as it is without anybody exacerbating it. So in closing, British Columbia is in a place where all of us, British Columbians, are just trying to get through the pandemic. And unfortunately, John Horgan is busy looking out for his own career. It's hard to find any British Columbians who want this election other than John Horgan and the NDP. We need to do better. We can do better. Our two key priorities are very clear: to rebuild the health of our communities and to rebuild the economic health of our communities through a recovery plan. You'll be hearing more about that in the days to come as this election unfolds. But we have to ensure the safety of our communities. And I know you work every day on this, and I know that you get up every morning with that as a priority, wondering if you're going to get sideswiped with some unfortunate outbreak in your community. We have to stick together on these issues. I'm committed to working with each and every one of you on these priorities, which is why I'm here today. Because all of us want to see results that we can be proud of. We want to go home and say, I did my job well. I served the people of my community. I served the people of British Columbia. I did my best to get us through difficult times. We have a huge challenge ahead of us. It's not going to peak until later this fall, we suspect, as the case counts go up and the economic damage rolls in the door. But in spite of that, I'm excited, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic. And I know you are, or you wouldn't be here. Because this is our opportunity to shine as a society, to do our best, to be our best, and to build that British Columbia that we want, to restore confidence, and to rebuild BC. I hope you'll join me in this, and I, of course, hope to have your political support on October 24th, but I respect your decisions to make that privately and on your own, although if anyone would like a lawn sign, I'd be happy to take your name. So thank you, Maya. Thank you, all of you in the UBCM, and thanks for doing what you do, because it is absolutely essential work right here in British Columbia. Thank you.